This is the Chamber Chat Podcast, the show dedicated to chamber professionals to spark ideas and to get actionable tips and strategies to better serve your members and community. Hello, Chamber Champions. Welcome to Chamber Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Burton, and it's my goal here on the podcast to introduce you to people and ideas to better help you serve your chamber members and your community. Our title sponsor is Community Matters, Inc. With nearly 20 years in the chamber industry and over 100 media awards presented to their chamber partners, Community Matters provides the R&R that every chamber needs, revenue and recognition. When it comes to publishing a chamber map, directory, or community guide, Community Matters has a trusted experience to help your chamber accomplish your goals. With different advertising sales models and publication styles, Community Matters will help you create a non-dues revenue machine. Let's hear from Becky Womble, President and CEO of the Bastrop Chamber, to hear about her experience using Community Matters.
I've been using Community Matters for probably 6 or 7 years now. And in a previous life, I sold commercial printing. So I can highly recommend Community Matters because it's a complete turnkey job for any busy chamber exec. Basically, you give them a membership list, and from there, they contact your members, and it's no high pressure sales or anything. And it really is a complete turnkey job from start to finish. And it's a wonderful, beautiful printed product whenever you're finished. And I'm very sold on Community Matters. And with a printing background, big endorsement for me.
To learn how Community Matters can support your chamber with your next publication, please visit communitymattersinc.com/podcast to request your free media kit and request a proposal to find out what kind of non-dues revenue you can generate. Our guest for this episode is Carol Hamilton. Carol is principal of Grace Social Selector Consulting, LLC, and host of Mission Impact podcast. Carol helps organizations and teams become more strategic and innovative for greater mission impact. She facilitates strategic planning, mapping an organization's impact, and organizational assessments for nonprofits and associations. Carol, I'm excited to have you with us today on Chamber Chat Podcast. I'd love for you to take a moment to say hello to all the chamber champions who are out there listening, and to share something interesting about yourself so we can all get to know you a little better.
Well, thank you, Brandon. Thank you for having me on the podcast. It's an honor. So my name's Carol Hamilton, Grace Social Sector Consulting. And I was trying to think about, what interesting thing could I share? But I think one that informs the work that I do is that I'm the younger sister of a person. My brother has significant disabilities. He's autistic and profoundly deaf and developmentally disabled. And growing up with him, as my older brother, I definitely saw the way in which the world was not built for someone like him. And so for me, when I'm doing my work, I'm always trying to contribute my small part to really building a world where everyone can thrive, where there are really no exceptions to that. And so that kind of what motivated me to, come into the nonprofit sector and want to be part of movements and groups and organizations that are really trying to help build a world where everyone can thrive.
Yeah, I like that. It's neat to have that driver, behind you, that background that really motivates you to, for greater good. So I think that I imagine that will come into our conversation today in inclusion aspects as we get into our topic today. But based upon your work and the kind of the focus that we wanted to take our conversation today on the podcast is going to be focused around common strategic planning mistakes. So I'm sure you have some examples and things that you can share with us from your experience in meeting with different organizations and going about strategic planning. And I'm excited to dive in deeper and learn from these experiences as soon as they get back from this quick break. Are you looking for a year-round, affordable, and timely shop local campaign for your chamber or CVB? Look no further.
Build a custom Eat, Shop, Play mobile app with App My Community by visiting appmycommunity.com/chamberchat. App My Community mobile apps are not just simple membership directory listings. They provide many more capabilities to engage with your community. Provide your residents with a robust events calendar. Partner with a local fair, festival, or farmers market to provide a schedule, map, and other resources to promote the event. Run a small business Saturday campaign any time of the year using built-in scavenger hunts. Allow your membership to communicate directly to their customers via push notifications. Your App My Community mobile app will be a unique member benefit, allow you to generate non-dues revenue with sponsorship opportunities, and best of all, provide a valuable resource to your community. Please visit appmycommunity.com/chamberchat now to receive 10% off your first year of an App My Community mobile app. Are you looking for a way to grow and manage your Chamber of Commerce more effectively? Look no further than Chamber Nation. Their innovative software provides everything you need to streamline operations, engage members, and increase revenue. With features like event management, membership directories, advanced membership tools, mobile apps, community kiosks, and financial reporting, Chamber Nation makes it easy to run your chamber like a well-oiled machine. Don't miss out on this opportunity to take your chamber to the next level. Visit richardscalendar.com to learn more about Chamber Nation today.
All right, Carol, we are back. So as I mentioned before the break, we're talking about strategic planning mistakes. So for chambers that are tuning in, creating a strategic plan is an integral part of their organization, being able to know their mission and purpose going forward. And as they go about creating strategic plans, what are some of these key things that you see that stand out that organizations maybe ought to be aware of, and some of these mistakes that you see that maybe we can help these chambers avoid some of these pitfalls by sharing some of your experiences?
Yeah, I think pitfalls are probably is a good way to put it, because certainly nobody goes into the process trying to, have it not be productive and effective for their organization. But I think one of them, and I'll be a little I don't know whether controversial or contrarian here, is that the common wisdom around boards and staff, and I'm sure that there are many of your listeners who are maybe on the volunteer side of local chambers, but where they do have staff, it's been seen that the board, or traditionally been held that the board is the one who's in charge of strategy. And that's certainly an important role for the board, but I like to take a whole organization approach where really every part of the brain, both that analytical side and all the complexities that people bring, all of them are important to the organization's future, and kind of opening up the conversation to include more people into how you structure and frame up your vision, and will really serve the organization well to help have people be more motivated to be behind whatever you ultimately as a group decide are your big goals, the big vision that you're moving forward. So I would invite leaders to, bring more of a kind of big tent approach, so that when a lot of people talk a lot about buy-in, and then if they do it with a small group and then bring the plan to other people and wonder why they're not excited about it, I would say get the people in the room with you. They'll get excited about it because they've had a hand in creating that vision.
Yeah, and I think that's such an important part of creating a vision, is getting buy-in from as many people as possible and being able to feel like they had a voice in creating that plan. So as it's unveiled and you get rubber to the road, you get more people that are willing to participate and help move that mission forward. I like how you mentioned how typically you might see how a board, that might be a pitfall, right? Where if it's just the board sitting in a room creating a strategic plan, maybe they're missing insights from others in the community. So when you talk about getting more people involved, if you looking at a chamber of commerce, what examples might you give of other types of people or organizations, or where would you look to get more involvement in creating that strategic plan for a chamber?
Yeah, and I think when I say that, it doesn't mean that everybody is ultimately at, the planning session or the retreat. It's that you've taken the time to get feedback from a variety of stakeholders. You've identified who those stakeholders are, who are important to, moving the vision of your organization forward. The people who are your very involved volunteers, your staff, your members, but then wider than that, people in the community that you have partners with, other organizations that you have alliances with, the people that you serve. All of those folks will be important. They won't necessarily all end up in the room making the decisions about the organization, but taking that time to talk to people and get feedback. And oftentimes that's where an external party, a consultant can help out, because folks will be more willing to kind of share candidly with someone who doesn't have a stake in the outcome, in terms of that feedback and input, and will also help to synthesize all that information, because it's a big lift to talk to a lot of people, and then you've got so much information it can feel overwhelming. But how do you sift it down to some of the important nuggets that then you, as a smaller group of board and staff, can really chew on and say, okay, this is what we're hearing from people. This is what we've said ourselves about what we want, and this is what this is the significance it has for us and our future going forward. And oftentimes I find that, again, that kind of fear of that big tent is that folks will be overwhelmed by the number of opinions, ideas, all the different things. And in terms of when I've done this work with groups, I've actually found that they've been surprised by how much agreement there actually is, and pleasantly surprised. And it often will bring issues onto the table that maybe they were thinking and they talked to somebody in the hallway, but after the board meeting, but they weren't willing to bring up in the formal session, and so that this process can make it safer to have those conversations about critical issues.
I like the point that you make about bringing in a consultant for that specific purpose, because I think there's a lot of value in bringing in somebody from the outside. I've seen myself in that role where I'll joke about being the bartender, where
Right.
the members of the organization, they'll tell you all their gripes and all the things, that they see wrong with the organization, and the things that they like.
And the things that they're excited about, sure.
Yeah, exactly. But things that they may not be as open to just telling the chamber directly, or to get in the face of the chamber executive and say, I disagree with this or that. Or so having a third party come in, there's a lot of value to being able to flesh out that real meaningful data, that information that you can get from people that you wouldn't get just having your normal day-to-day conversations. And I think for a chamber staff to be able to try to collect all this feedback on top of doing their day-to-day job, it's a big lift to try to do that and make sense of all the information they're bringing in. So having a consultant, somebody who's focused on that and being able to go through what all that information means and present it in a way that makes sense, and you can look at a report and kind of go over it and say, okay, this is good feedback. So in soliciting that feedback, you had mentioned talking to individuals. So I imagine there can be an interview portion of soliciting feedback, talking to some of those key stakeholders, surveys. What are some of the ideal ways that you see in soliciting that feedback that have been effective from your experience?
Yeah, so it's going to depend on each organization and the scope and the scale and their capacity, the budget, all those things. But generally, it's a combination of interviews, one-on-one interviews, focus groups with, groups of people up to 8 to 10, and then surveys. And so some combination of those will enable you to really get into what do people perceive as the strengths, the challenges, the opportunities, and all the things that are important for the future of the organization. And I think another mistake that organizations make is thinking that strategic planning is just about having a retreat. And so for me, that data, that kind of listening tour that you can go on is a really important fundamental piece to get that good snapshot of where are you at this moment? Where is the organization right now? What are people are saying across the board are challenges and things that are getting in the way, and then what are the strengths that everyone's seeing and the opportunities. So really being grounded in that kind of what's our current reality.
Right. And before that retreat happens, you need to have good, accurate data to go off of before
Exactly.
you make any decisions, right?
Exactly.
So there's the planning before the retreat that takes place.
Yeah. So that's part of that data gathering process.
Yeah. So as I'm thinking of these interviews, I think my first thought goes to, with the chamber, to go to the members of the chamber, to get feedback from them. I think it may be important to even solicit others in the business community who are not members to find out what do they see the role of the chamber being. Why are they not members?
Right.
Have they been members in the past? What can we get from that experience? But also committees, right? So there's different committees within organizations, and getting their feedback on their role and how they see that being a part of the greater organization, and how can things maybe be more efficient. And I don't know, I'm just trying to think of all the different sources to gather data from, to be able to create a rock solid strategic plan. Are there other areas that you would think of to go to gather that information?
Yeah, I mean, usually I'm working with the organization and a set of smaller set of folks from the organization, usually a combination of, staff leadership and board, to really identify who all those important stakeholders are. So the organization will know, who's really important for us to talk to. And so we'll work together to come up with that list of, okay, who are we going to kind of reserve that one-on-one interaction with? Who are we going to invite to more of a group experience? Who are we going to reach out to via a survey? So really thinking through those important points of, who most matters to the future of the organization, and also what do we want to learn from them? What are the big issues that we see that we're curious about, that we kind of know our perspective on, but how, is that in alignment with how other people are seeing it? So kind of getting that cross check of, is how we're seeing the things aligning up with everybody else, and where's their agreement, and where's their, some divergence of opinion.
I like that. And you said something that stood out to me. You said, what do we want to learn from them? And that should be the basis of all of these interactions, right? What do we want to learn from them? And that takes me back to the thought of inclusion, when you shared the tidbit about your brother and kind of that lens that it gives you in looking at your work. How do you go about inclusion, and specifically getting these opinions of voices that may not be heard as regularly as they probably should be?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to think about, as you're making those decisions about who you're going to prioritize to interview and do focus groups and surveys, is really the power dynamics within the organization of, are you only favoring people who already have the most power and already have the most voice and already have the most influence with the people that you talk to one-on-one, or are you doing more of a cross-section of the organization so that you get that rich feedback from a variety of people? So it's thinking about it in those terms that will help define and really put inclusion at the center as an organization, if you want to grow, being able to see the wider net is going to be important. So,
yeah. So we've talked a lot about gathering that information, the data, and then the retreats is usually what people think about when you think of
right.
a strategic plan. So let's focus a little bit more on the actual implementation of the plan. How should that look? What are some of those pitfalls that you've seen that people need to be aware of to avoid as they go about implementing their strategic plan?
So before we jump to the implementation, there's one thing I wanted to say about the retreat, which I think is also another pitfall that people can fall into. And it's kind of I think it's the thing that leaders fear when they bring a lot of people in. So they fear a retreat that ends with just flip chart after flip chart after flip chart of nice ideas. And they haven't taken the time to talk together. And I actually ask people to do this at the very beginning before they start brainstorming ideas of how are we going to decide what we're actually going to do? Because you can never do it all. And you can't do all the good ideas, so you need a way to discern which ones are going to be the ones that you focus on. And so having that conversation up front of how are we going to make some decisions, and then ensuring that somewhere in the process you are making some decisions and discernment is so important, because otherwise you end up with this laundry list plan that isn't really a plan. It's just a wish list. And so if you end up with a wish list plan, that gets in the way of implementation. But I think that's another key point, that being clear with everybody all along the way that you're going to have to focus on a couple things. You're going to have to make some decisions. And if you can be clear with everybody, okay, these are the things that we're looking for. We're looking for things that are going to grow revenue. We're looking for things that are going to increase member satisfaction, that are going to, improve our reputation, or going to, contribute in some way to community health, whatever it might be. You've agreed ahead of time what those criteria are, that it all aligns with our mission. So that then when you have that long list, you can go through and actually make some decisions.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of times people and even other organizations will come to the chamber and say, here's a great idea of something that you should do, right? And then it becomes that wish list of others. So I can see where you can have those charts that end up being a long wish list of, it'd be great if we could do this and that. But when it comes down to it, you need to have the resources to be able to execute and be able to do it well, right? You don't want to just take something on and then have it be lackluster and have it end up being a bad representation of your organization because you're not doing it well. So
exactly.
Moving beyond that wish list and having a solid plan is huge. That's important. So
and that list of criteria that you come up with can be great in that instance of all the different people coming and saying, well, you should do this. Well, we can run it through this kind of rubric, decision-making flowchart, if you will, and decide whether it actually fits our goals or not. But I think in terms of moving from, okay, we've got a plan, it's got 3 to 5 big goals, no more than that. We've identified what are some of the action steps that we're going to take. We've really gotten clear and gotten shared understanding about what does success look like for each of those. So oftentimes I'll see plans that have that big goal, have a couple action steps, but don't necessarily go that next step of saying, okay, if we take this action, what do we expect is going to happen? What do we think that's going to look like? That in the way so that we can know whether we've had the success. So this is where you get, your performance indicators, whether that's, some of them will be, quantitative, but some of them may be qualitative. Some of them may be, we decided we're going to take a new approach in membership, and we're going to work with somebody to come up with a plan around that. And so, the first success item is going to be, we have a plan. So there'll be a variety of different things. So with that, then thinking about, okay, so this is a plan over 3 to 5 years. how do we actually, what are we actually going to do in the next 6 months? Just focus on that and not try to predict what you're doing in year 3. I see a lot of people getting caught up in wasting time trying to nail down every detail over the 5 year, 3 to 5 year period. And I say, just take that for the next 6 months, that next year, and that's where you do your implementation plan of who's going to do what by when.
I like that. It's hard sometimes to you get caught up in the big vision, the big plan, and you forget that it's the day-to-day actions that execute on that bigger 3 to 5 year plan. So as you talk about these performance indicators, it's probably good to review what those performance indicators are in some sort of a regular interval. Do you have any suggestions on how often to look back? Like, because you can also get caught up on the data and continually look at it and not move the needle or feel like you're moving the needle. So what's a and there's probably not a straight answer for it, but what would be your guideline to being able to check those performance indicators and see, how things are trending?
Yeah, so the 2-step for me of really making a plan, integrating it into how you do your work, is creating that shorter term implementation plan, but then also coming to agreement about, okay, so we're going to check in on this at this meeting, every quarter or every 6 months or every year, whatever and have an agreement again ahead of time of how you're going to do that. And then to remember that the strategic plan, we talk about things being living documents all the time, but somehow in people's head, once the board has approved it, it becomes this written in stone, sacred document. And it's not. It's a plan. Things will happen that you can't anticipate. Strategic planning is not about predicting the future. It's about setting your intentions about where you want to put your energy. So you're going to have to readjust. So it's that kind of balance between, we have some goals, we have some strategy, we have some structure, and we're going to be flexible. It's not an either or, it's a both and. So having agreement about how you're going to do that and who's going to be able to make some updates is really important as well.
Yeah. I think the pandemic taught everybody that.
Yes.
You need to be able to be flexible. It's a plan, but we need to be able to pivot and make adjustments where needed.
Yep.
So that's a great point to make. Are there other things when it comes to strategic planning, pitfalls that we haven't addressed that come to mind that we want to make sure to touch on?
Yeah, I think it's when you're actually doing that decision making about what are you going to focus on over the next 3 to 5 years. It's balancing, we want to stretch, we want to improve, we want to grow. And we don't want to, again, it's kind of a different version of that long laundry wish list. But if the aspirations are so beyond where the organization is, it's also going to fall flat because it just doesn't match the capacity. So not to just say, okay, this is all we can do because that's all we have right now, but being realistic about where you are and what's going to move you forward to actually, so that you have the resources to do what you want to do. So not having those two things be decoupled.
Yeah. It reminds me, and I'm terrible at attributing quotes, but I'll say the quote and you can look up whoever said it, but something to the effect that individuals underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years, but overestimate what they can do in 1 year. So,
oh my God, or 1 week, right?
Yeah, 1 week. Yeah. So you go out and you say, and this year I'm going to do all these things. And really it's like, like you got to eat the elephant one bite at a time, right?
Right.
Where in a 10, 5, or even a strategic plan, a 3 to 5 year plan, because we see the quote unquote failures on those smaller timelines, we don't feel like we can shoot big because we've seen the smaller steps not come through, but we sell ourselves short in realizing what that cumulative effect of having those small effects has over that longer time horizon. So
yeah, so it's the tricky part of trying to find that Goldilocks spot of, just enough stretch and also, tempered with some realism about, what can we accomplish with what we have.
Yeah.
And then what do we need to get if we want to do, when we want to do more.
Absolutely. Well, Carol, as we start to wrap things up, I like asking for chambers who are listening, who are interested in taking their chamber up to the next level, what kind of tip or action item might you have to share with them as they try to accomplish that goal of raising or elevating the level of their chamber?
Yeah, I mean, the tagline that I use for my podcast is, people who are in the nonprofit sector who want to do good in the world without being a martyr to the cause. And so I think the thing that I've been hearing a lot from people recently is when leaders get in their own way of having the organization be overly identified with one person, and to step back and realize that it's a group effort where it's always a collective effort. That's why we have organizations. And so how can you take small steps? You were talking about that, eating the elephant one bite at a time, to start building leadership capacity throughout your organization. So, asking a staff member to share and facilitate part of a board meeting if you do the whole thing all the time. Just taking small steps. What's one thing on your to-do list that somebody else could do and they could learn from it? I know it's easy for you you could probably do it faster, and it might take a little longer to give them all the context. But I think the more we're building leadership capacity, the we're also contributing to the strength of the organization long term.
Absolutely. And I think that's such a key point to not have the organization be about one person. So it's about relying on your board and your organizations, your ambassadors, all the different committees and different things that are involved. And I don't know who eats elephant anyway, but
Well, right.
I don't know, but
it doesn't. They don't appreciate it, and it doesn't sound very tasty.
That's right. Sounds tough, but I also like asking, as we look to the future of chambers of commerce, how would you view the future of chambers and their purpose going forward?
Well, I guess I would hope that chambers would join me in my goal of trying to contribute to a world that really thrives that really is built so that everyone can thrive without an exception. So whatever businesses can do to contribute to helping their community thrive, and have it be about all of us versus a few people. I would love the chamber movement to be part of that.
Yeah, I think that's great. Carol, for listeners who might want to reach out and connect with you and learn more about your offerings and how you might be able to help their organizations, what would be the best way for them to reach out and connect?
So my website's gracesocialsector.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, although my name's pretty common, Carol Hamilton. So also check out Mission Impact. It's on all the podcast platforms. You can find me there. So
that's awesome. And everybody listening is listening to a podcast, so they know how to find
exactly.
a podcast. So look it up, Mission Impact. Hey, Carol, this has been great having you on Chamber Chat Podcast. I appreciate you setting aside some time and being with us today and bringing the value and experience from your perspective and strategic planning and helping to give these chambers that are listening an extra boost as they go about doing that in their organizations. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for the opportunity.
If you are a chamber professional, please subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. When you subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast, new episodes will show up in your podcast app each week as they are released. If you're finding value in this podcast, please leave us a rating and a review in iTunes. But most importantly, please share Chamber Chat Podcast with your colleagues that are in the industry. Would you be interested in creating even more value from the processes that you're already doing on a daily basis? Swypit has been one of my sponsors for Chamber Chat from the beginning. Swypit provides credit card payment solutions that will save your chamber up to 40% on your processing fees, and Swypit can integrate your credit card processing seamlessly into your existing membership software. Swypit does not charge chambers to switch, and they will make switching simple. In addition to these savings, Swypit has an affinity program for chambers of commerce, so you can earn more non-dues revenue to support your budget. Learn more about Swypit by requesting your free cost savings analysis and become more profitable today by visiting chamberchatpodcast.com/cc as in credit card. Again, that's chamberchatpodcast.com/cc, and you can join many other chambers as you begin swiping with Swypit.